Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ciao, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedlie. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, wonderful, historical neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and oh so happy that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Let them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network. And they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your favorite shows. We have a fantastic show for you today, especially if you or your kids love pets, in particular dogs and cats. Bethany Murgia will be here to celebrate Wagnificent. And later in the show, N Stewart will be here to celebrate Bill Bailey, Please Come Home. It is part of her Shotgun Shack Kitties series.
You've heard the whispers. You've seen it on TV. You may have even seen the movie. Now it's time to bring Dungeons and Dragons directly to you with D&D for Hire!
More than just a game, D&D lets you step into the role of a hero you create and guide them on fantastical adventures with your friends. Perfect for beginners and experts alike, D&D for Hire is sure to delight and entertain your kids for weeks on end.
Such a fun game. There are endless possibilities. There's so many things that you can do. It's so much fun.
Our son Eli loves D&D. It's like his favorite thing to do all week.
I was like 15 when I joined. I'm 21 now. There are people who are in our party, really learn to come out of their shells.
Whether you're near or far, whether you're looking for a birthday party or a campaign to keep you adventuring for years to come, D&D for Hire has you covered. Learn more at dndforhire.com. That's dndforhire.com. D&D for Hire, bringing the adventure to you. D&D for Hire runs games digitally over Zoom or in person in select areas.
Hey there, families! Are you looking for an exciting way to bond and learn together? Look no further than our STEM is Family Fun video series. Join us as we explore the fascinating world of STEM through hands-on activities right in your own home. Our series features lessons from experts at renowned institutions like the San Diego Children's Discovery Museum, the National Children's Museum in Washington, D.C., and Children's Museum Houston. From making homemade rainbow bridges to creating an oboe out of a straw, there's something for everyone in the family to enjoy. So grab your lab coats and get ready for an adventure. Go to readingwithyourkids.com and click on the STEM is Family Fun link at the top of the page and let the learning and laughter begin. STEM is Family Fun, where learning and bonding go hand in hand. Join us right now from the beautiful city of San Francisco. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new graphic novel. It's called Wagnificent. Please welcome to the show, Bethany Murgia. Hey, Bethany, how are you?
I am doing well. Thank you, Jed. Thank you for having me here.
I'm delighted to have you on. Graphic novels, I make this statement every time we're celebrating a graphic novel. I did not appreciate when my son was younger, middle school, high school, I did not appreciate the fact that the graphic novels that he was eating like candy were literature, and that the time that he was spending reading those books was reading.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have a little bit of a bias toward graphic novels, believing that it's not reading. But first of all reading is reading. Mm-hmm. Reading a cereal box is reading. What I did as a kid at the breakfast table. Any words going into your brain are reading. And I think graphic novels have the added benefit of visual literacy. So it's not just reading words. It's really learning how to synthesize words and images and understand a story in that way. I think they're incredible. For me personally, I didn't grow up on comics. I was not a comics kid. And I began to adore graphic novels when my youngest daughter started reading them. She was not a huge reader. My eldest daughter was reading Harry Potter in first grade, loved to read. And then my second daughter just really didn't. And these graphic novels started coming home, and I was sort of like, what is this? It was very new to me too. And I absolutely fell in love with them and absolutely knew that someday I wanted to make one once I saw how wonderful they are in terms of character development and just really allowing you to make the story as you read the story and make it up as you go along. It's not all all fed to you in the way a movie is. There's so much work going on in the reader's brain, which I adore.
Yeah. You mentioned reading cereal boxes. I think in the 60s and 70s, that was the most read thing in the world.
Absolutely.
And they didn't change, and you would read the same thing for a week at a time, and unless you had a very eclectic cereal taste, you're reading the same box over and over and over.
Exactly, yes. That's right.
But I don't think I read the ingredients, so that's probably why I kept on reading the cereal box and eating it.
Right, yes.
So tell us about Wagnificent, please.
Sure. Wagnificent is my first graphic novel. I'm very excited about that. I've made picture books in the past. I've been doing picture books for 10 or 15 years now, and just finally making this step into graphic novels. It's for ages 6 to 10, so it's an early middle grade graphic novel, and it's the story of Thunder, the dog, her human sage, and Thunder's inner wolf, who's sort of a curmudgeon, or I like to say furmudgeon, if you will, who really wants Thunder to follow her wild instincts. And, at its heart, it's a friendship story. It's a friendship adventure about the magic of a human and dog bond, which I think is such a special thing, human and animal bonds. So it's really a book about care and a book about love, and it was inspired by one of my dogs.
Well, that is fantastic. It's, right in that the age range that you created this book for is that sweet spot of really learning about friendships and all that goes into it. And you're right about the relationships between dogs and humans, especially kids. My daughter so wanted a dog to the point that we decided when she was 4, her age 4 birthday present was a magnificent border collie who lived with us for 13 years. And it was just so sweet and special. And, he loved everybody in the family. But if anybody did anything that he perceived as threatening to my daughter, he was all up in our face and letting us know that was not allowed.
Yes, that bond is incredible. Their loyalty is incredible. And I think to have that at that young age is really special. I'm not sure that I particularly at that age understood what a dog was. I think sometimes with relationships, we come to them with expectations. And I think humans might expect dogs to behave or to kind of be cuddly stuffed animals. And dogs come to relationships with expectations of us, right? Like they expect us to be loyal and to take care of them and, who knows, maybe to roll around in the dirt and to dig and sniff things. And, a lot of those times those expectations don't overlap, and that's where, there can be chaos, and especially in this story, that's where there's some chaos. But when they do, when you have those moments where expectations are aligned, it's such a magical experience across species to really connect that way. And I think for me, one of the things with my dog that this story is based on, we hike together a lot. I'd like to describe her as part wild hunter. She's very wild. Part lap dog. She's 40 pounds and also extremely happy in a lap. And a total drama queen. And that's kind of the package of this dog that made me think, I really want to create a character from this dog. But we spent miles and miles hiking together, which I hadn't done with a dog before. And understanding and seeing her in the wild and having this sort of shared language. For example, she's a quail enthusiast, really loves the quail. And on our hikes, we would do the same hike over and over again. And any place we'd seen a quail before, she would always, as we would approach the bush or whatever particular area it was, stop and starts stalking very low to the ground. And for me to recognize that, just have that shared history and know exactly what this behavior was about, and to say, okay, it's time, you can look for your quail here. It's just a really special thing to communicate in that way, even though there's not verbal language exactly. You know that you're communicating with an animal. It's wonderful.
That it is true that there is truly communication. And my wife, we no longer have the border collie. We have a very broken beagle, who my wife says has me wrapped around her fingers, because for some reason I know exactly what the beagle wants at all times, and it's just with a look. And I don't always appreciate it, but it is really neat.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think anybody who's adored an animal has spent a certain amount of time connecting with them, a certain amount of time wondering what they're thinking, and then kind of that certain amount of time wondering why there's a wild animal in your house. I mean, when they're running through the house, tearing apart toys or whatnot. And for me, that was the other piece of writing this that really, as I was trying to figure out how to tell a dog story, I was actually at an author festival, and there was a petting zoo, and the petting zoo had a domestication timeline on the wall, and it showed, obviously, that dogs were the first animals domesticated by humans, which I knew. I think we all kind of know that somewhere, but I hadn't ever really thought too much about it. You hear they're pack animals, kind of have this background information, but I started doing a deep dive into wolves and dog domestication and dog behavior, and that, for me, was the piece that kind of solidified this story in terms of understanding a lot of dogs' impulses, and, the fact that maybe they do sort of have this curmudgeonly character sitting there telling them to follow their instincts. And I mean, for me, I can see it on my dog's eyes. She wrestles with wanting to make me happy and then occasionally just really wanting to follow whatever those wild instincts are. And, yeah, it's just fascinating. I mean, they're fascinating. They're still 99.9% wolf in terms of DNA. They still have so much in common with wolves. And then they just have so many interesting ways that they've changed, so that's fascinating to me.
It really is. I had an interview earlier in May of this year with Alexandra Horowitz, who is a dog behavior expert and gets into their thinking. I forget the exact title that she has, but it was very, very cool conversation. And I had just returned from a tour of El Salvador. I was down there for almost a month, and we went all over the country. And and I used the term with Alexandra that there are many thousands of feral dogs down all throughout El Salvador. And she said, well, we refer to those dogs now as free range because they're really not feral, because they still want that connection with human beings, and they don't hunt in packs when they're free range, and they really want to depend on us. And it was really a fascinating conversation. And I really encourage everybody to, I also owned cats at one point in my life, and there's just no comparison. Cats are cool, but I'm not a cat person at all.
Well, they're very different, and Alexandra Horowitz is definitely an inspiration to me. I have read all of her books. They're incredible. I think some of that's woven into this, and in fact, one of her books is mentioned in the additional reading at the end of Wagnificent, because she's definitely the queen of this area in my mind. But yeah, cats are different. They come from, because I'm doing research for another book in the series that will have a cat character. They come from solitary wildcats, so they don't have that pack background. And I don't know if Alexandra got into this at all with you, but there is some research suggesting that perhaps early humans modeled our societies on wolves, because wolves were living in packs long, long, long before humans were on this planet, which is amazing to think about, and a really good perspective shift to take once in a while, and to remember there's a lot to learn from the animals around us.
I don't believe that she did mention that, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. This is fascinating. I bet you there might be some people out there listening to this thinking, wow, That's a lot of research for a graphic novel, for a comic strip. I mean, I never would have thought it.
If I showed you the shelf of books I've read, so many books, but it's fascinating, especially everything going on in Yellowstone. I would start there with Alexandra Horowitz's books and with Rick McIntyre's books, The Rise of Wolf 8. Absolutely incredible what's happened there. And for me, the most interesting piece about the wolves, in terms of the dogs, is that you think of dogs as, you think of wolves and understand the prey drive and all of the pieces of that we see in our dogs, the herding, the chasing, that all makes perfect sense. But for some reason, I didn't understand just how playful wolves are. And I kind of think of that super playful puppy behavior in dogs as kind of on the human end of the spectrum, right? Like some of the things they do seem more human and like they might have come from us. But absolutely not. Wolves are so playful. I went to a sanctuary and watched them play because they understand the importance of play and keeping the pack strong too. And that's another one of those lessons that just I try to hold on to every day. And I think we as a society could hold on to if we all could figure out how to play together, then we can do the hard stuff together. Then we can go out and do the hunting.
Yeah. You mentioned play. My daughter now has a beautiful dog, about 60 pounds maybe, and it's a mutt of all different breeds. But all the breeds that made this dog are muscle. Just it's like a 60-pound muscle. But when he's playful, man, oh man, he gets the zoomies and he's running around and nothing is safe in his path. but it's one I love watching him when he is running crazy like that.
Yes. And one of the great joys for me has been having more than one dog. We had the one dog that the story is based on first, and now we have 3. In fact, we have one of them is a 3-month-old puppy. So we're in the throes of puppydom right now. But watching them play together is incredible. They have their own choreographed play language. It's this dance, and it's wild, but they know it. Like they just instinctually seem to sort of know how to play and dance together, which is really beautiful. And I see them kind of working with the puppy now, the 2 elder dogs, to teach the puppy the ropes of the playing. Say, okay, you can jump like this, but not like this. And the dance is starting with the puppy too. It's really, really amazing.
I'll share this with you because I shared this with Alexandra after we stopped recording. At one point in our life, we've had dogs throughout my life, and oftentimes would have more than one dog. For some reason, my mom decided that she wanted a Saint Bernard, but not only did she want a Saint Bernard, she wanted to breed Saint Bernards. So we're living in an apartment in the inner city of Boston, and she's very successful at breeding the dogs because most St. Bernard litters are 2 or 3 dogs. We had 13.
Oh, my goodness.
To the point where the mom kind of passed out, and I was in high school, I had to help her deliver all the dogs and clean them off and all that kind of stuff. And they grew up fast.
Yes.
And being in our neighborhood, there wasn't a lot of people. We were mostly poor, and there weren't a lot of people who wanted to buy a big St. Bernard and could afford to pay for a big St. So at different points, we had 14 St. Bernards in this apartment, 2-bedroom apartment in the city, and it was quite crazy.
Unbelievable. So you're well-versed in seeing how they interact at that age and how they teach each other and the whole pack mentality.
Absolutely. And my dad coming home going, we got to get rid of these dogs. It's costing me a fortune to feed them.
That's great.
So right. Tell me, when you're creating Wagnificent, are there moments that you spent with your dog that like, oh, I have to add that to the story? Or is it all just, imaginary things coming from the feelings that you had from the dog?
It's a little of both. For sure, there are some things that are specific to my dog. And one of them is that she does not like to be dressed up. So that is one of the first scenes in the story. I've talked to the vet about it. The vet says, yeah, clothing just breaks some dogs. And it really does. She just freezes. She's so uncomfortable if you try to put a costume on her. And I guess it makes sense, in the wild, anytime something's on your back, it's probably not good. So I do have that as kind of the one of the introductory scenes in the story where the wolf pops out to say, what are you doing? Have you ever seen a wolf wearing clothing? This is not acceptable. You can't allow this to happen. And then the dog tears the costume to bits. So for sure, there are moments from our life in it. In fact, a few weeks ago, our dog managed to tangle with a skunk in our backyard.
Oh, that is
and
the worst.
The very first time that's ever happened, amazingly, it was so overwhelming. There were people across the street in masks saying, what is happening, like running out of their houses. The smell was so unbelievably intense. And I'm currently working on the third book, which has a lot of sniffing and scent work and odor in it, and thinking, well, this probably fits right into this. So it's funny how they do kind of write stories for you.
Yeah. So this is going to be a series. Do you know now how many books will be in the series?
We're working on 3 books.
Awesome.
And potentially more, but 3 for now, and I'm very excited about them. They have the dogs, the wolves, the shenanigans, the goofy moments, the tender moments. We have a foster dog storyline in the second book. And then, as I said, the third book kind of touches on nose work and scent work, but also is just more about training, since that's a huge part of having a dog.
Yeah.
Is finding that, way to communicate and to avoid the miscommunications.
How different is it for you to create a graphic novel from a picture book, where I'm imagining the first difference is there's a lot more words, or am I wrong about that?
For sure, more words, although it's surprising how few words you can put on a page or a spread of a graphic novel and have it not look cluttered. You write your script first, and then you start putting words into balloons and thinking, gosh, this just feels too heavy here, or like too much. So it's definitely a balancing act in terms of of figuring out the words and the images and what makes a page feel like it works. But overall, it is more words. It's, a picture book is usually 32 pages. This graphic novel is 160, and obviously they can go on up from there. For me, I worked as a graphic artist for years before I became a graphic novelist, and that helped a lot to have a graphic design background, because I've worked making magazines and catalogs and putting words and pictures together on a page. And even though all those years I was making catalogs, I was thinking, gosh, I really want to be illustrating. It all fed into my ability to do this work now. So it's a lot more planning. It takes a lot more time. Graphic novel takes at least a year and a half from start to finish for me. Yeah.
I'm imagining it must, because, you're saying that Wagnificent is 160 pages, and maybe there's, 4 or 5 images on a page, 4 or 5 different boxes. So you're talking hundreds of images as opposed to 15 or 16 spreads for a picture book.
Exactly. Yeah. And it takes a lot more planning, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of daily quotas just to sort of stay on track. But I love that sort of thing. So for me, it matches my personality. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. So I have to ask this, because I had 2 fascinating conversations a couple years ago with 2 different graphic novelists. And one was very, very honest. And she said, I made these characters easy because I knew I was going to have to draw them 1,000 times, and I didn't want to have to do that. So it's just real simple. And then later on that same week, I interviewed another who was writing a kind of a historical fiction graphic novel about ancient Greece. And she was saying, there's so much detail. And like every picture takes me a week and a half to do.
Yeah, I'm sort of in the middle of those two, but I think on purpose, because I didn't want to make the images so simple that they didn't resemble real dogs. Since so much of dogs' communication is nonverbal, I really wanted the drawings to project whatever the dog was saying. If it's a play bow, if they've got their tail tucked, it just really, for me, that part needed to feel real enough that a reader would get that communication, even though it's not words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Wagnificent would be so much fun for a family to read together. And I actually think it would be a lot of fun for them to read out loud. With the middle grade ages, it's like, yeah, you're going to co-read that and then talk about it. But I'm thinking Wagnificent would be a real fun read aloud for an older kid with his parent. What kind of conversations do you think would pop up if they were doing that?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I would hope that there would be conversations about some of the information about wolves and understanding the similarities and differences between dogs and wolves. But more than that, if the families have dogs, I think it will give them windows into their own dogs and sort of encourage them to pay more attention to their own dogs and what their dogs are doing and communicating to them and, ideally really deepen those relationships. So, anytime, the story is told from the dog's perspective, and anytime you're telling, seeing through someone else's eyes, you have the opportunity to build empathy. And that's what I'm hoping that this is doing here, as so many times you might be frustrated with your dog for doing something or not understanding it, that this might give a touch of a window into what they're thinking and build empathy and build those relationships. And every dog's different. What they need from their people is different. So we all have to pay attention and figure out what they love and want. Absolutely. Yes. Tell us where we can go to find out more about Wagnificent and find out more about you and the other beautiful books you've created. My website probably is the best place, and that is aquapup, AQUAPUP.com. And Wagnificent comes out in July. It's not out yet. But I am offering a pre-order special with some stickers and goodies if anybody's interested in doing that. And they can find the button for that pre-order on your website? Yes. Awesome. Indeed. Awesome. Yes. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of Wagnificent. Our guest has been Bethany Murgia. Bethany, thanks so much for being with us. Thank you for having me. This was fun. Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Before we invite our guest into the studio, I would love to invite you to visit a very special website. It's clownswithoutborders.org. Clownswithoutborders.org. This is a group that I absolutely adore. I am part of Clowns Without Borders, and I had the honor of being part of the 2023 tour of El Salvador. I had so much fun joining with artists from all over the world to bring a smile to people who really needed it and really appreciated it too. And we would love for you to join us as a monthly Joy Maker. The Joy Makers, they're a family of people just like you who love to laugh and make other people feel good. So please take a moment and visit clownswithoutborders.org and consider joining me as a Joy Maker. Join us right now from the musical city of New Orleans in Louisiana. Our guest is here today to celebrate her beautiful children's book. It's called Bill Bailey, Please Come Home. It's part of the Shotgun Shack Kitties series. Please welcome to the show, N Stewart. Hey, how are you, Amy?
Thank you so much, Dad. I'm really happy to be here. It's a lovely day in New Orleans. It's like 70 degrees. I'm really happy.
Oh, I'm, as we say here in Boston, I'm wicked jealous. So tell us about Bill Bailey, Please Come Home. First, who is Bill Bailey?
Yeah, so Bill Bailey, I created this series of children's books called the Shotgun Shack Kitties. And Bill Bailey is actually one of my real life cats. here in New Orleans who lived with me in a shotgun house in the Gentilly neighborhood of New Orleans, along with a whole lot of other cats. And this book actually came from stories that I used to tell my friends' children, like around Jazz Fest and during times where we were having festivals. It just started out as a book where it started out more as me telling stories to my friends' kids, and explaining that music is a universal language, and how animals can understand and interpret music. And I made up this story where the cats could start talking to the humans when they learned how to play music. And so after some time during the pandemic, during 2020, I actually sat down to write a novel. And what ended up happening was I wrote this series of children's books instead, because it was a very sad time for me in my life, but it was also a very sad time in New Orleans. And I wanted more than anything to just write about all of the beautiful things in New Orleans rather than like sit down and write what was really going on. I decided to create this entire fantasy world where, you know, there weren't any of the problems that we have in New Orleans, where it was only just focusing on culture, music, the neighborhood, the camaraderie in the neighborhoods, you know, that relationships between teachers and students that happen when they learn the tradition of jazz music. And so that's really what all of these books, I have an entire series, but only the first book is out right now. And that's what all of these books highlight.
So you mentioned your city, and I'm really curious, how has the city and the recovery from Katrina gone? Is the city still struggling to get totally back on its feet?
Yeah, we never recovered our population after Hurricane Katrina. And, you know, there were a lot of funds that were given to New Orleans. A lot of them were misappropriated, as tends to happen, especially in Louisiana. And, you know, we've just never really fully recovered from that. And apart from that, I just feel like, you know, we're all becoming more and more disconnected. You know, we can blame it on social media, we can blame it on all of these other things, but I just think that there's a growing trend to where we don't connect one-on-one anymore. And the thing that I've always loved the most about being from Southeast Louisiana was that we all had more time and we all made more time to connect. Not only do we have an amazing amount of festivals that get enough sponsors that they can be free, there's also very expensive festivals like Jazz Fest, but we have festivals that can be free for everyone, that allow people to connect. But I just feel like more and more there is just like a growing trend. For some time in the 90s, I remember being a kid and thinking that that music and movies didn't influence culture. And I'm an adult now, and I'm like, they absolutely do, you know, because I remember the growing trend in violence whenever I was younger and I was a teenager, and thinking that I remember adults then being like, we have to get rid of this music. This music is like part of it. And I remember thinking that there's no way that it's part of it. And now as I'm an adult and I see even some of the choices I made when I was a teenager, I'm like, those movies and that music definitely influenced all of us to make these choices. And, you know, when Katrina happened, New Orleans, one of the best parts about it is that we had all of these mom and pop stores and restaurants and, you know, even shoe stores and clothing stores, like all small businesses. And what I noticed after Hurricane Katrina was a lot of that closed down and didn't come back. What I noticed when COVID happened was even more of that closed down and is not coming back. And even today, I see more and more things closing all the time. that just couldn't survive COVID. And when COVID happened, this growing trend that happened after Katrina, we had spikes in violence, and we all know now there's more and more studies happening. We know that trauma is connected to violence. People don't commit violence who haven't already been traumatized. So it can also just become a cycle. One of the most beautiful things that I've been so grateful to be part of this community, I grew up outside of Baton Rouge, but New Orleans has been my home my entire adult life. And the most beautiful thing that I see about this community is the way that we have like this tradition in the jazz music and with the brass bands, where it's like there's these older teachers who are teaching younger kids, like, this is what we do and this is how to play, and giving them outlets that aren't just connected to things that can get them in trouble, giving them an outlet for the trauma that they had, giving them an outlet for the trauma that may have been passed down in their family. So many of us these days are dealing with so many different types of trauma from day to day. And I feel like you become desensitized to it when it's in the music and the movies. And I also feel like you become desensitized to it when you see it in the community. Like, if you know of someone being shot like every week, if you hear of someone in your neighborhood getting shot every day, it becomes normal. And the increase in my neighborhood after COVID with gun violence grew so much. And I didn't know any other way to do it but to write stories that talked about the beautiful things in New Orleans. Just because I feel like, too, when we focus on things that are bad, I don't know if it really makes more bad things happen, but I know it makes you notice only bad things, right? So I'm like, maybe if I can focus on the good, I'm not trying to pretend the bad isn't there, but like if I can focus on the good, but also if I can write some stories that help children be interested more in the things that are good, then like maybe I can make something better here, just bring some kind of sunshine. I really want to see New Orleans recover in a way that's better for everyone in the community and not just, there's a lot of people who've been moving here from California and New York and buying up houses. And that started after Katrina. But, and I don't blame them because everyone loves New Orleans. I mean, even for all of our social problems, we have the best restaurants, the best people, the best music, the best like festivals. So I don't blame people for wanting to come here, but it's hard when it pushes people who were from here out, So it's just, I don't know. I really want to see there to be a better balance here as far as that goes. Yeah.
You mentioned music and young musicians playing with older musicians and learning from them. I think music in many parts of the arts are one of those places where people can develop intergenerational friendships. Yeah. And they can develop friendships with people of different cultures and different perspectives. I think one of the terrible things that's going on in our society here in the United States right now is the tribalism that is occurring. If you're not on Team Purple, and then I don't want to talk to you. If you're not on the green team, I don't want to talk to you. And I believe everything everybody in my team says. Well, that's not possible.
It's not good. Yeah.
And so, and in music, it gives people a chance to come and focus on something that's that's really universal. Even if you're playing jazz and that's what you typically play, but there's somebody who comes along who plays hip hop or classical music, you can get in there and learn from each other and have some fun.
I mean, that's one of the most beautiful things that I've witnessed so many times in this city. the late great Alan Toussaint, I've seen him do that at his shows at Jazz Fest, where he'll bring on a hip hop artist to sing on one of his songs that when he wrote that in the 60s wasn't ever intended to have a rapper on it. You know what I mean? And I see jazz musicians collaborating like that all the time. And it's really beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to see. And it's also a beautiful thing to sit in a whole room full of people who I know that they're not voting for the same person I'm voting for. You know what I mean? I know that some of their ideals are extremely different, but we're in there having the same feeling and smiling and getting the same experience. I think it's great. And you make a really good point, because it's just so many of us we think that everything has to be black and white right now. And I understand where that comes from, because it's like everything feels really scary. And we're all in a time where it feels kind of dangerous. And so we're human beings. For survival, we have always been tribal, right? We always like go into the area where it's like, this is more comfortable. But we need to be reminded to get out of our comfort zones, you know? And I feel like art and music, they need to be getting back. We need to be getting this stuff back into the, like, all school programs, because they help people bridge those gaps. They help people have more critical thinking. They also help you to be able to talk and maybe work stuff out in different kinds of ways, you know? So yeah, I mean, that's just a really good point about that. If more of us could just learn, like, hey, if we can't agree, maybe there's a way that we can talk through this. I mean, maybe there's a way we can play through this, you know?
Yeah.
And I really think that that's one of the things that I long for the most right now, because unfortunately, because of certain ideals of people I've even grown up with, I'm not able to communicate or connect with them in the same ways anymore. And it makes me very sad.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be able to connect with people who I've known my whole life. And for me, the door is still open. But like for them, their ideas about the way things have to be are not at all bendable, you know? And then that's another thing. I don't know if you picked it up in my book. The illustrations in my book, I made sure were very representative of my neighborhood and people in my neighborhood and the way that we all get along in my neighborhood, even though we're all look very different, you know? And that was my illustrator, who is also from New Orleans. That was something I expressed to her, that I wanted to be like we don't need to talk about it, but I just want to show it, you know? Sometimes it's better if you just show that stuff rather than like talk about it, you know? Yeah.
And I one of the things that we encourage...
And I can talk about it, but I didn't feel like I needed to say it in the book.
Right,
you know what I
right,
mean?
right. Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that we encourage families to do is to take a picture walk through a book. Even before you read the book for the first time, just go through it. Maybe if you have a reader, cover up the words with some sticky notes and just kind of go through and think, what do you think is going on? You see these cats and they're playing instruments and they're in this really unique city. And it's just a really fun way to have conversations, to empower your kids, to let them know that you value their thoughts and their opinions. And then it's really fun to go back and then to read the story and find out, wow, we were really close, or like, wow, we didn't have a clue what was going on.
That sounds like fun. The next time I'm reading with one of my nieces or nephews, I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that before.
Well, I love the fact that you are creating a series that celebrates the good. As you were talking about what's happening in our society today, I think one of the things that's happening is that we catastrophize a lot of the issues that we're facing. And yes, these issues are serious and we need to address them, but we don't need to think that it's a meteor about to break through the clouds and destroy us. We can sit down and we can have conversations. And And also at the same time, just celebrate the fact that, yes, while we have this issue over here, all these other things in our lives are really, really awesome. We are, if you compare life now to what it was like in the 60s or the 50s or the 1800s, wow. Yeah. Things are so much better.
Yeah, I love that we have indoor plumbing and electricity. I love that we have air conditioning, right? Mm-hmm. I also love that, even though I talk about how in my community there's a lot of violence, that for the most part, we're all like really together and friendly. I mean, I love that I live in a community where I walk down the street and we all speak to each other and we all make eye contact and we all smile, hello. And then I also live in a community that even if someone's having a bad day, they can tell you and not feel, I've made 5-minute friends. We may never see each other again, but we talk in the grocery store for 5 or 10 minutes and we might even hug each other. And I mean, I haven't, well, I take that back. Something special happens when you're from New Orleans and you go to other places, because that has happened to me in New York City, but not quite as quickly or as often as it happens in New Orleans. And I think the reason it happens to me when I'm in places like New York City or Mexico City or Bangkok or San Francisco, wherever, I think it's because I grew up in Southeast Louisiana and it's just my nature to walk around and smile and talk to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Some people don't like you for that, but for the most part, it can make you friends everywhere you go.
I know here in Boston and even in our neighborhood, when I walk around, I wave to everybody and say hi. And my wife will be out with me if we're walking the dog and a car will drive by and I'll wave and my wife will say, "Who's that?" And I go, "One of our neighbors, I guess. I don't know. Just a human being to say hi."
I like it.
Yeah. So how many books in the Shotgun Shack Kitty series are you anticipating?
Well, I mean, I have 12. There are 3 that are actually written. I'm hoping to start the illustrations on the next one pretty soon. And, that's it. Yeah, I'm talking actually, I self-published this first one and, man, that is a lot harder than you ever think it's going to be. I could talk to you for an hour about that, but, I feel really good. I've been talking to a couple of different traditional publishers and I actually think I'm hoping the one that's local is going to be the one. Because I like doing things local. I'm a Louisiana girl and it would feel really good to be published by a Louisiana publishing company. But, I really, fingers crossed, would like to move forward traditionally published just because, that way I can focus more on just working with my illustrator and writing and not all the other details that you don't realize you have to learn about. Like the formatting and stuff like that was really challenging.
There is a lot. We say here in the podcast, when you become an author, you don't realize it, that you are actually starting a small business.
Yes. And I'm good at that. I own a business. I'm a massage therapist. I own a small practice. I've always done service industry. So, marketing, talking to people, doing events, stuff like that, I'm fine with. But all of the other back end stuff with production and everything is wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I just wanted to touch on this real quick. In addition to being a children's author and a massage therapist, you're also a stand-up comedian.
Yes. And that's I've only been doing it for about a year, but I had started with storytelling and I was doing storytelling before COVID happened. And it took me a few years to come back to the storytelling. But as I was doing that, I was like, you know what? I want to start doing stand-up. And last year, my brother passed away. And there were a lot of things that, he had on his list that he had been delaying, that he hadn't done. And that was for me the catalyst of I'm going to start doing stand-up. And I'm going to finally do these books. And so that really was what happened. So yeah.
Well, I'm very sorry for your loss, but I'm really happy. You seem like, not only with our conversations about, you being surrounded by these issues, but you wanted to celebrate the wonderful things about New Orleans. You had this tragedy in your life, and instead of wallowing in the sorrow, you said, you know what? I'm gonna make something wonderful out of this, and that's a beautiful thing. And any parent that's listening, when you go out and pick up Bill Bailey, Please Come Home, remember that about Amy's personality and share that with your kids. Because I think that's
thank you.
That's a really good role model. Where can we go to find out more about Bill Bailey, Please Come Home, and find out more about you?
Yeah, so shotgunshack.kitties.com is our website. That's where there will be more information all the time about the new books in the series. I'm on Instagram. We're also the Shotgun Shack Kitties on Instagram. And then, that's it.
That's
enough. It. That's where you can find us right now. Oh, I have a Facebook, but it's just not that lively right now. And there's a TikTok, but I don't really.
Yeah, tell me.
I'm too old to learn TikTok. I think I'm 42. I'm like, what?
Well, I'm almost 100, and TikTok. We have one, but there ain't much happening on it. So, we've had a great time speaking to the author of Bill Bailey, Please Come Home. Our guest has been N Stewart. Amy, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jed. It was so nice to talk to you.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids, and will join us for the next exciting episode of the show. Hey, we would really appreciate it if you could take a minute. If you love reading with your kids, we would love for you to leave us a review on whatever podcast app platform you are downloading your shows from. We're especially interested in pumping up the number of reviews we have on Spotify. It would really help the show, really help our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Thanks very much in advance. We hope you will also join us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram and TikTok, and at Jedlie Magic on X, formerly known as Twitter. Please also consider a visit to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. If you're listening to us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, you can, and you miss any of the show, you can find the show and listen back on our website, readingwithyourkids.com. There's a link there to all 2,000 plus episodes of Reading With Your Kids on our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and we would be so happy if you would check that out. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, N Stewart. Please be sure to check out her Bill Bailey, Please Come Home, and the Shotgun Shack Kitties series. And, of course, we want to thank Bethany Murgia. Wagnificent is the name of her book, and we think you will enjoy it a whole lot. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady, Stella Sheree, Hannah Bosange, Julia Lippman, Judy Hu, Alyssa Montero. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much. Taking the time to make the world a better place, and you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.